Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. It took me a minute to get the meeting started.
Hey Chris, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Hey Chris.
Let's see. Wow. Getting a lot of people here. Okay. Wow. I guess we'll get started here. Hi, I'm Chris Barnes, and this is the Vivo Apps and Tools Working Group call. And I'd like to thank everyone for attending. If you didn't get a chance to see today's agenda, if you look in the wiki, I'm going to kind of mimic what John does here, John and Alex Video, and put the agenda and the meeting notes in the wiki. And so if you look at can everybody see my screen?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep.
So if you look in the Duraspace wiki and under the Vivo Apps and Tools Working Group, an area which John so gratefully helped me create, thank you, John. I'll put the meeting notes and the agendas before the calls in the wiki. So the link to the Google Doc, which you guys can see over here, that's shared, should be shared with everyone, that I'm going to use for the meeting notes is here. And then after we're done, I'll copy or transcribe the meeting notes into the wiki. Also, though, if you feel like editing either one, go ahead and edit while we're having the call. That'd be great. So, quick going over the agenda, I wanted to talk a little bit to see about working group goals. And then I wanted to give everyone an update on the Duraspace wiki for our working group. Then I was going to give an update on my work on curating the list of existing tools and authors and maintainers in the wiki. I was going to go over some SPARQL example templates and ontology diagrams and code samples. We had talked about this on the last call, is coming up with a way to make it easier to reduce the barrier to entry for people trying to make apps and tools. Then I'm going to give a little update on my work with a tool called Vagrant, which is my efforts to try and make a virtual machine for the Vivo working group that people can use to more easily spin up a development version of Vivo that they can play with. And then we'll open it up to any other business. Does anybody have any questions before we get started? All right, fantastic. Working group goals. One of the things that I was hoping to get from this group, now that we've had a second call, our first call was kind of a lot smaller, but I'd like to talk a little bit about the goals that we have, or that we had talked about earlier in the previous call, and to see how they align with everyone else that's joined the call, and see if they kind of have a similar feeling about what they would want to see out of the group. One of my goals personally is to help see the increase of the use of SPARQL endpoints to use as data sources. So one of my goals for for my work in the working group is to do better documentation and to find ways to help people implement SPARQL endpoints and overcome some of the barriers. I know some organizations don't want to expose their data in a public way. One of the thoughts we have talked with John and Cornell about is coming up with a way to have separate graphs so that you can expose only the data you want to expose. So those are some of the ideas that I want to work on over the next year or so. Also, I want to make more code samples available in other languages. So as an example, today I'm going to show a JavaScript example on how to execute a SPARQL query and pull back all the positions for a particular person, and then consume that data and reuse it. So those are some of my goals. Essentially, when I started working with this working group with John, the idea was to create a place for people who want to build applications and tools outside of Vivo to get together and come up with a set of goals and objectives that then we can give back to the main Duraspace working group to help them implement. So this time I'd like to open it up to anybody else that would like to tell me why they came to today's meeting, if they have any goals for being part of the working group that they would like to share.
Hey, this is Anirvan from UCSF.
I'm sorry. Who's speaking?
Sorry, this is hi. This is Anirvan Chatterjee from UCSF.
Hey, Nervan. Yeah, we've talked before in some of our CTSA Connect calls.
Mm-hmm.
You work on plumage, right?
Yeah. So at UCSF, we're using profiles, not Vivo, but they're interoperable enough for our purposes. We're definitely excited to hear about real-world use cases for some of these applications. We've been doing a lot of work with profiles APIs and getting those out into the world. We have about 20 different on-campus groups that are using our data right now, and we're really looking forward to hearing about how more people use that data. We've spent a lot of money investing in our RNS, so we want to make sure that we can get the biggest bang for the buck.
Okay, thanks, Nervan. And we're hoping. I'm hoping that at some point I can talk you into giving us a demo of plumage.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I see that we got Patrick and Richard from Duke joining. Thanks for joining, guys. I know that you guys had said that you were going to be able to make it this week. So how come you guys came to be part of the working group? What are you thinking that we should be working on? What do you think some of our objectives might be?
I mean, you kind of covered some of them, but it's just a way to share different apps that have interacted with Vivo and how people are using some of the data coming out of Vivo, if it's an app that they've created, or and then also I guess we also have like the ingest. Everyone has done kind of, well, not everyone, but has done kind of different ingest processes. So that's something I think at some point we could show as well, but just to see how people are getting data in, and then working with the data after it's in. So I guess it's kind of like actually working with some of the Vivo data, both going in while it's in, because we run into issues just with the size of data, manipulating it, pulling stuff out of a model, making sure it's removed, and then coming out, making it available, like we have Vivo widgets, and making it available on people's sites. I don't know if Patrick want to add anything.
No, I think in particular, you kind of already said it, but like for the ingest process, I think it would just be valuable for us to see how other people are doing it, and maybe there's some common solutions out there to that common problem.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the goals definitely, is to see if we can share common solutions. I think a lot of people early on when they work with Vivo, they're spending most of their time trying to figure out how to get the data in, and then after they've built up a good number of profiles and it looks pretty good, they're like, okay, how do I get it out? And everyone seems to be at kind of a different phase. You've got the early adopters and the people that have come on recently. So we're definitely in the UF. We're definitely in the how do we get it out phase. However, just yesterday I was working on trying to scroll through 52 million lines of RDF that we're going to add to do an update for all the people that we have. We're trying to do a mass update. I've been struggling with it. So
yeah. I mean, we definitely found it's an ongoing issue. I mean, certainly occupies a lot of our development time, thinking about like new sources of data or just changing kind of how we're doing it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, this is John at Cornell. I'm certainly very interested in understanding. I mean, we continually, have people that are just picking up Vivo and are kind of lost in hunting through old documentation and so forth, and been trying to think lately about ways to get people more in a common framework, like, I know Michael Barbieri for a while had worked with mods as a sort of standard format for publications that was relatively easy to get data from RefWorks or EndNote or Google Scholar or other sources of publication data to that format, so that if we could have a good way to get mods data into VIVO through the harvester or through some other path, that would be helpful. And I think the more that this group can help just sort of understand what best practices are and how can we bring people more to a common place so that they're not burning up so much time learning everything over again for themselves, or developing local custom solutions that aren't generalizable, but instead can start with something that's close to what they need, and that would be very helpful for this group to do, I think.
Hey, and Irvin from UCSF just caught me out at I didn't have the Word doc or the Google Doc world editable, so now it is. So I apologize. So if anyone wants to edit, yeah, no, I agree very much, John, and that's and one of the other things that is coming up here as an example that I'd like to figure out how to have this group help address is we're looking for an official list of universities. We're having a problem with data curation. It seems like every time someone goes to enter their expertise, they decide to enter their university in a different way than somebody else instead of picking it from the list. So it's a constant challenge. And we were just talking about it recently, saying, do we use a DBpedia list? Do we use a list that we have locally? Is there some official source of data? And I'm sure that this is just one example. There's probably lots of them. There's probably journal names and other things where we can find official lists. But that's one of the things I'd like to see this group do, is kind of come out with recommendations for people to say, hey, here's an officially curated list, or here's where we get it from, DBpedia, something like that. Because I think that would help a lot of people, because they look for those answers and then they just kind of muddle through it on their own. It would be good if we could make recommendations.
Yeah, that's something Melissa very much wants to do with the ontology group, to work on that same problem. So there might be ways in which different working groups could join.
You could do it. Just log on.
Okay. Jim just joined me here, so he's here too.
Hi.
Hey, Jim. Thanks for joining. So, I mean, this is kind of a. I didn't want to spend the whole meeting on this topic, but it's something that I'll probably touch on every call, is to kind of make sure that the goals are still aligned. I'll try and take these again and refine them down into some major categories, and then we'll just kind of look at them and review them from time to time, just to make sure we're on the right track.
Hey, sorry to jump in at the tail end. This is Andrea from Plum Analytics.
Hey, no, go ahead, Andrea.
Yeah, sure. I was trying to. That's always the challenge with distributed calls, right? You're always trying to not talk over someone else. Yeah, so we build analytics tools, and we're trying to build those on top of VIVO data. So building tools on top of the data. So some of the things that I'm hoping to kind of get out of this is, one is looking at consistent data across different VIVO instances, and just where are the issues, where it's different, where is it the same, just different implementations, and what kind of challenges does that pose, and possibly as a group kind of recommendations, which is similar to what you were just talking about, okay, but different as well. And then just in general, best practices as you're starting to look at VIVO data. What's the best way to interact with that? What have other people done? Those examples to go and look at, I think, are really, really helpful. And then thinking of, once there's additional data that can be associated back to VIVO. So, for instance, once there's metrics data about a particular artifact or author in VIVO, what are some of the ways to either integrate the data back or make those, from an application level, what's the best way to take advantage of that? Are the sorts of things I think about.
Okay. So again, more ways about working with the data and looking at ways people are. So you'd probably like to see the different ways people are getting data out and the way they're manipulating it and putting it back in.
Right.
Well, fantastic. Well, thank you everybody for your input. I think that was kind of a good segue, hopefully, to one of the things that I wanted to talk about on the agenda, which were the updates on the Duraspace wiki. So one of the things that I had done with John's help was create a main section in the Duraspace wiki. I think if I move my notes here, everyone can see it. Can everyone see the Duraspace wiki in my browser? Okay. So John has helped me create a new high-level section. I'm still kind of trying to organize it here, but one of the things that I wanted to show you were a catalog of tools and maintainers. And I stole this list from a list that John had given me a while back, and it's by no means a comprehensive list. But I wanted to get everyone's feedback on whether or not this would be valuable. So my idea was we would have the name of a tool or an app, and I'm going to skip down here to widgets because I know that Patrick and Richard are on the call. And so I would have a description for Vivo widgets, plugins for Vivo, and I know that it's more than that, and I apologize, but we could put in a better description. And then we would have the contact information for the maintainers. I'm hoping that this would be a good way to kind of have a starting point. I know that we should probably eventually have every one of these has their own wiki pages and their own Git repositories and things like that, but I wanted to start simple and just have a central place where everyone could go and find at least a description of what was available. And so I wanted everyone's feedback about that. And anybody that wants to help edit that list too, I'd really appreciate it. So I take your silence as tacit approval that I've done a fantastic job and the list is perfect in every way. I know Steven's shaking his head at his computer right now.
Looks like a good start. I'm sure we can add more. Somewhere I'd made a list of things that I was aware of when I was talking with you about starting this group, Chris, so I'm sure I can add a few more.
Okay, fantastic. So this is kind of the idea that we would at least keep track of all of them so they wouldn't get lost. And it was kind of funny because I had forgotten when I started making this list that Mike had built a couple of R examples like 3 or 4 years ago that showed you how to use R to access Vivo data and run SPARQL queries, and then he used them to make some visualizations to make some network diagrams. So yeah, definitely over the coming weeks and months, we'll be adding to this list and probably coming up with better ways to curate them. But for now, I just want to make sure that we don't lose anything. We don't lose any tools that have been built as time goes by. All right, so go ahead.
I was like, Chris, I went in and added some links to the ones that I could find. But that's where it was getting great because some of them I linked to like their GitHub repository and some of them are linked to, I didn't know where the code was, so I just linked to the project. I thought that might be handy.
No, absolutely. I appreciate that. Some of these things I'm still going to have to get together. I started with the list. On the first call, I promised that I would do it by now, and I haven't done it yet, and I apologize. But there are quite a few tools and gadgets and utilities that are still over at the old SourceForge site. And so eventually I'm going to have to pick some of them or pick them all up actually and try and bring them over here and integrate them into the Duraspace wiki. I'm probably going to have to set up some GitHub repositories for some of the tools that don't have maintainers anymore. Some of the PHP code examples for Vivo probably won't.
What do you mean that some of the tools are still on the... I'm confused because we brought everything over from that tools... I think it was SVN repository. We brought all that over. What we might want to do is what we did with the search stuff is there's a method for building, pulling a directory out and making it a new repository.
Mm-hmm.
So you should, Chris, on the Vivo project in GitHub, there's a tools repository. I
Okay.
don't know what tools are missing.
There,
Just so you know.
well, there,
Yeah.
yeah, no, there's that repository, and some of them are in there, but some of them were just zip files that were uploaded to a downloads page.
Okay.
So,
All
and then
right.
there's some
That's what I was.
content. There's some content that has some examples that they're just content. So they might need to be take the code extracted from the wiki page and put into some kind of form where people could get it. So I mean, there's just some of that cleanup, Stephen, that I wanted, because when I went to look around, I found all three types. I found some in the repos, some in the pages, and some that were just downloads. So I think that we can do a better job of curating that. And what I'd like to see is to get all of them into Git, where people could clone them and get them out and use them in a standard way, and then have a wiki page
Okay.
that represents it. Have all that linked here to this table, right? So this table would link to the place where you go get the code to run the example or the tool. I mean, that would be my desire. I mean, in other open source projects that I participate in, mostly like with Ubuntu and Debian, that's usually what you find. You find a table like this, and you can get quickly to the package or the tool that you want to use. So this will be improving as time goes on, and any help editing greatly appreciated. Or if you don't want to have to edit it, but you know of somebody that has a tool or you have a tool, please feel free to email me and I'll go put it together for you. I'll edit it for you and put the links in the table. So then anyway, this is our beginning of our catalog of tools and maintainers. The next thing I wanted to show you guys was an idea that I had that we talked about last time, and Nicholas Rejak here at the University of Florida helped me. One of the things that we thought would be helpful for new people or new outside tool developers would be examples of SPARQL queries. We know, and I know for a fact today, I struggled with this example today while Nicholas was helping me. So what I wanted to do was create kind of a template for making examples so that we could share them with the entire community and have them grow over time. So the idea would be that I think that each example should have a diagram of the particular part of the ontology that the example relates to. In my example here, I'm talking about how to get back information about positions. So I'm using a person and positions diagram, and I know it's outdated, but this was an example I wanted to be able to show today. This was a 1.4, a VIVO 1.4 position and diagram description. Let me blow it up here for just a second so you can see what the diagram looks like. And I had Nicholas take a look at it for me. He said it's still probably pretty accurate. So I think that one of the things that will be helpful as people start to look at using VIVO and tools is to understand the relationships between the entities and between the data in VIVO. And it's really particularly hard for people coming from a traditional relational database background to understand VIVO and its data relationships sometimes. So one of my goals would be to help break down those barriers and make those, hopefully those relationships between the data a little bit more clear. So anyway, this is a diagram. I think that every example should have a diagram that has a small section of the ontology represented visually. Then I've given an example of a SPARQL query. So here's a query that will bring back position information based on someone's email address. So in this case, it's bringing back mine. I've included the actual SPARQL query that links to our SPARQL endpoint, so they can go right to the example and run it. And you can see it pulls back my positions. And then I've given what the results would look like. I've given what there was an example of how to get the output in JSON. I highlighted that here. I gave an example of what the JSON return should look like. And then here's some sample JavaScript code that you can use to run that query and get back the JSON data and enumerate it. And right before the call, I was actually playing with it. And so when I run my code here, you can see my JavaScript alert box is coming up, and I'll show you here with there's my URI, and I'll show you over here in the console here for Chrome. You can see the same JSON array. So you could do more fancy HTML stuff if you wanted to. I didn't have time before the call, but basically you could iterate through here and you could grab out any one of these. Here's the labels. If I scroll to the right, you should see here's the label for that position. So again, this was just an example. The main point I wanted to bring forth is I wanted to get everyone's feedback to see if they thought it was worth time creating these. I'd like to create maybe 5 or 10 basic ones, like how to get back a person by their URI, how to get their contact information, how to get their position, how to get their publications, how to get their educational history, some of the basic things that a new app developer might want to be able to play with, so that the idea would be we could bootstrap some people into starting to build things. I think if you have some code to play with and you have some SPARQL queries to play with to get some data, it kind of gets you over the whole hump that SPARQL is. At least it is to me. It's always kind of intimidating when you're trying to go and do something. You always have to go, okay, I gotta get past that SPARQL to get the data back. So I was just hoping I can get some feedback from you guys today and see what you think.
Hey, this is Anirvan from UCSF. I think it'd be helpful to also have a good hello world example where people can actually just look at maybe some tiny web application or a web page that's loading something dynamically, and then so they can kind of pull it apart instead of just looking at the data by itself.
Okay. I agree. So more hello world than what I wrote, you're saying. So maybe, I mean, what would you like to see it do?
Like an actual working application. I feel like a lot of the time we're still a little too high level for people to really see the promise.
Okay, so
yeah. Hang on, let me see if I can find an example of something we do at UCSF. Keep talking.
sure, no problem. Thank you, Anonymous in Buffalo, for helping me take notes. I really appreciate it.
So Chris, I think our big question here was how did you generate the diagram like that? That'd be nice to be able to do.
Oh, I didn't tell you about my magic diagram generator? No, I didn't actually generate that. I took that out of the VIVO Wiki, and I think that was either done by Nicholas or Amy Bueller back in the day.
Okay.
Stella might have made that one.
Or Stella might have made that one. So people have made these individual ones. That was kind of what I was hoping for, is I'd be willing to make the diagrams. If we could come up with 10 examples that people would like to see, I'm willing to go take the time and effort to make the diagrams.
Oh, okay.
But no, those are handmade. Maybe I'll put that out to the list. Go ahead.
This is Ted Brown. I definitely like the idea of sample SPARQL queries. There's some in the wiki, or at least there was in the SourceForge wiki, that I think they're from Florida. And when I was first getting started with VIVO, those were really helpful. So I second this plan.
Thank you, Ted. I mean, yeah, what I was hoping to do was kind of put a little more formality on the example, so that we had all the pieces, a diagram, a query, and some code. Because even me, having done this for a while, I had to go back to the wiki and look at some of these examples to kind of pull them from 3 different places to pull them together. So I apologize. I'm sure you spent many times trying to search through the wiki to join concepts together to get them into one working piece of code. So, but I do like Narvan's idea about creating a basic hello world application. I think that makes sense too. That's probably a great place to do some work as well.
And I just added a link to a Hello World example we've used at UCSF. In this case, it's an example for an internal simplified JSON API that we use. But if you take a look, it'll sort of give people kind of give folks the right idea.
Do you mind if I open it? Do you mind if I open it?
Please go ahead. Yeah, go for it.
Oh,
So
wow.
it loads data in real time. You can click on where it says click to hide JSON API content, click to show API content.
Cool.
And if you view the source, then there are notes in the source explaining like what's going on.
Oh, and you're using the Google Ajax API. You can write in from there.
Yeah, just to pull in jQuery. And I mean, it's really small. It's about 100 lines of HTML and script, but it's kind of it's a real example somebody can look at.
No, that's fantastic. That's that's great. One of the things, maybe I'll shoot this over. This was actually what I was working on. I just didn't have it finished before the call. So this is actually the script that I had, very similar to yours. But yeah, I'd love to steal your example and then put in my query string and pull back my JSON and work with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, so I'll work on that and I'll send that I'll send the first ones out to you. Maybe we can present it back to the group after we get a good working Hello World with Vivo data. You know, what'd be neat too is if we could mash up Vivo data with your profiles data in the same Hello World. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah.
So, any other thoughts on SPARQL and SPARQL endpoints and queries and examples for people? Basically, I'm hoping to get some feedback from the group on
I
what.
think
Go ahead.
it's like a better example of not just, before the wiki just had, here's a bunch of Sparkle queries you can run to get data back from your Vivo. These are, there's more diagrams and explanation, and then I like the fact that you're going to just kind of change the URL and make it work. So I think it's a uh, good thing to do, because these are the kind of apps that people are kind of calling for now. We want Vivo data out, put them into a website like we did in Florida. We want, a directory of people. We want, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what I was hoping to do was to encourage people with real. I mean, so that they could click on it, our SPARQL endpoint, and watch data come back. It's one thing to have a SPARQL query on a page and then not know where to go and paste it in or have trouble with that. I wanted to make sure that all these actually ran. So Nicholas and I spent quite a while making sure that every one of these ran and without problems before we put them in. So what about format? So I didn't hear anybody crying for XML. I was pretty happy to spit it out in JSON. That seems to be the data output du jour these days.
Uh, One of the things that we noticed with JSON, there's a big hump when things to a new developer who's never used the data before. In our case, we started profiles as sort of custom XML before profiles started generating Vivo RDF, and it was complicated enough where if you just smart developer in front of it, it would, their eyes would just kind of glaze over really briefly, and then they'd have to like figure it out. In our case, we were really focused on developer usability, which is why we had sort of a custom translator between the Vivo RDF, sort of local JSON. It was sort of a local JSON flavor that we're using that's a lot simpler. And our goal with that is really to make it so that somebody can like build an application in 5 minutes instead of having to worry about figuring out the whole ontology. I think maybe 90–95% of use cases are really similar, and we're really happy if people use a full ontology or go to Spark queries, but see things should be easy. So that's just a note from us. where we love the idea of letting people do complicated stuff, but
I think you bring up a great point. I like your example. I'm going to get that down in the notes there. I think that someone should be able to be making something in 5 minutes.
We've also had good luck at Cornell. John Ferrer wrote semantic services that are available, could probably now updated, use Elda or JSON LD or other. But the idea was to have be able to that would take a parameter like a person's net ID or a department to give you back a standard set of data, and he supports both JSON and XML. So we found that very useful. In fact, right now I'm writing something so that NIH can come and get a list of people's web pages if they have an investigator's email. They want to add links to NIH reporter. The NIH research database. They've asked us to send them a list of investigators and and we think it's actually better if they just come with the email address. We can just get back a list of web pages, and we can give them to them in the rank order that the person has listed them on their website, and also include their VIVO URL so that the full more data they can back to get it. So it's another similar kind of intermediate step that makes it easier on developers.
No, I agree. I mean, that's really where I'm hoping to come from. But I guess I have another question too. How many? It sounds like everybody that I've got here in the working group is not going to be the typical type of developer that I was thinking that we were targeting. It sounds like everyone here has already kind of gotten over that hump a little bit, and they're working with VIVO data in more sophisticated ways. Or am I just kind of missing it? Have we not cross-pollinated enough? Are these examples too? I guess what I'm asking is my approach and the goals, are they too simplistic for the group? Do they want to see more advanced goals, or do they feel like this is a good place to be on track with?
I think it's valuable to keep it simple to start.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's also a way to...
I think they may be a little simplistic.
This is probably valuable beyond the group to this work here, I think, for people who are really getting started with SPARQL queries.
Okay.
I think these would be useful for the people not in the call versus the kind of already been hip deep in it. But I think this is a good thing for us as people who have gotten over that hump to give back, if that makes sense, so that the next guy's not as hard.
Well, I'm hoping to be able to recruit more people to the group. I talked at the conference, and I've talked to several people outside of the kind of the VIVO sphere that are interested in working more with VIVO. Here at the University of Florida, we seem to have come over some kind of data threshold where now people are paying attention to VIVO because it seems to be a better source of data than other institutional systems. So people are now more interested in trying to figure out ways to work with it, and we're realizing that we don't have a lot of good examples to give them. So that's kind of why we're scrambling to do some of this work as well. And I know Simon Porter had told me in Australia, he's got groups of other researchers and other units that he and his team write SPARQL queries for and ways to get data for that they incorporate not only into their web pages, but into other workflows and processes that they use. So that's kind of what I see as our audience. Our audience are people that are not us. They're people that are trying to do things. I guess it's the people like, Richard, when you first started. You're a talented developer and you know how to do lots of things with the web, but this is your first introduction to VIVO. That's what I figured our audience was, kind of where a lot of us were 3 or 4 years ago.
It's a big hurdle.
Yeah. Well, all right. So let me move forward a little bit here. The next thing on our agenda was for me to talk a little bit about Vagrant. Now, is everyone here on the call, are they already familiar with Vagrant, or am I going over something that everyone already knows about and it's kind of a waste of time? Or alrighty then.
Love to hear about.
Vagrant is.
Do you have a working script? Because I started building one here, and I'd love to see an actual.
I have one that gets all the way up to the ant all, and then I'm still working on a Java library issue with the build scripts for 1.6. But yeah, actually, let me grab that real quick. And I'll put that in the notes, Stephen. So this is kind of a couple of things here. One, this is kind of the format that I see a lot of the tools having that are going to end up going in. So I have my own GitHub site, and I have my own GitHub repository. So as I started to do this, I thought about where am I going to put it? And I'm like, well, this may only be interesting to me. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in my GitHub repository, and I'm going to give everybody the link so they can go clone it. And if anybody wants to be a collaborator, they can be a collaborator. But if no one's at all is interested, then, it's not wasting anybody else's resources. So basically, Vagrant is a virtualization tool, and it's not really new, but it's kind of new to us. We've started using it in our development work for our team down here. What it allows us to do is we used to use a lot of virtualization, like you guys probably do, with VirtualBox and VMware. And as you're developing a project like VIVO, where it's got a web piece and it's got a database piece, you usually had to maintain some kind of centralized development server where people who wanted to test out changes to the source code or changes to the data, they all kind of had to play nice in the same sandbox and work with each other to go and make changes to the development tool without impeding other people's work. And frankly, it even happened here today. We were trying to do that people load with 52 million rows in it that I was talking about, and two of us collided on the development server at the same time. So what Vagrant allows you to do is it allows you to use what's called a box file. And in the example on the screen here, they're using a Ubuntu box, and it allows you to pull that box file down using the Vagrant software. And it's really just a virtual, if you're familiar with VirtualBox or VMware at all, it's really like a VMDK or like a VirtualBox box file. But what they do is they maintain a shared library on, well, there's several providers actually, but Vagrant maintains a library of current boxes and different types of boxes. And literally all you have to do to get the box is to reference the box. And so I'm going to show you in my Vagrant file here. And this is the other important piece of this, is that all of the settings and all of the setup for the virtual machine can be done through configuration files that can be committed to your Git repo. So this file here is actually in the Git repository up on GitHub. So you'll see it here in my text editor, and I'll go over here real quick just to show you that you too can check out this Vagrant file. And this is the URL up at files.vagrant where this box file is. And the first time you do a Vagrant up, it'll take maybe 5-10 minutes for it to download the box file. These, if you're using the Ubuntu box files, they're pretty small. They're a couple hundred megs, so they come down pretty quickly. And then they're set up at that point. You can do something called Vagrant SSH. You can get into the box. And, the very first thing that I did was if you don't use the other configuration systems like Puppet, you can use regular shell scripts. And so what I did is the first thing I did was enabled bootstrap.sh, which is as soon as the box provisions or the box starts up, it'll run whatever in that shell script. So you just name it and put it in a directory. So here's my shell script, and this is the very first thing that I did, and that was install Apache. So I'm actually going to do something real quick here. Probably shouldn't do a live demo because they never end or they never go well. So I'm going to delete all that stuff in my config file and save it. And I'm going to go over here to my console. Oop, I did shell. Oh, here we go. Is my shell big enough? Can everyone see it? Oh, come on. There we go. So you can see basically all it's going to do is after the box starts up and gets initialized, it's then going to basically create a shell session inside of the server and run whatever commands I have in this file. So you can see I'm going to use that to do an apt-get update, and then I'm going to have it install Apache, and I'm going to have it do some stuff with the var triple dub directory. I think I already had mine running, so I'm going to do a real thing here. There's a bunch of commands that are okay. So it wasn't working. So after you install Vagrant and you follow the instructions on there and you initialize the box for the first time, right? So the idea would be I'd be in this directory. I could go do a git pull. I could pull the latest version that I was sharing with Steven, for example, if we're working on it together. And then he might have fixed my Java problem. And then literally all I have to do after I have the git repo down, and this is a git repo, okay? All I have to do is type vagrant up. And it's going to go and import the base box file for Vivo Vagrant, and it's going to set up Apache. And if it does it in a reasonable piece of time here, I'll log into it and show you that it actually is real. But it's been a real help. We in the other projects that we work on here, which are not Vivo related projects, they're typical web application projects where there's like a LAMP stack, like a Linux Apache, and PHP or Python. It's been a lot easier to share development environments and configurations between our development team because of Vagrant, because it's all in the Git repo with the source code for the application. The whole development environment is there, and as you can see, it's over here. It's already setting up port forwarding. These are all things that you can do by hand with VirtualBox, and we used to do that. I mean, when Steven and I worked together here at UF, we used to trade VirtualBox files for Vivo with thumb drives and move them around. But this was so much faster. Not only that, but you can actually, you're codifying it. This is all in configuration files where it's all set. So if I make a configuration change to the environment variables for Java to fix something, Steven gets it as soon as I push it to the repo and he pulls it back down. And when we used to have to trade VirtualBox files, it would be like, oh, I got to get that tomorrow, or I got to find 30 minutes when I can copy that back and forth. And that's just not the case because Vagrant takes care of all that configuration nonsense for you and can make those changes to the configuration of your virtual machine without you having to do it. So what you can see here is it's doing that apt-get update. So, now it's reading the package list, and you'll watch it's automatically going to start installing Apache. See, there you go. So you can imagine with Vivo, the file where I'm trying to work on my Bootstrap file, it has all the things in there for Java, and it has the things in there for MySQL, and it has the thing, I can even put in, I've got it to where it creates the database by default. I've got it so it's setting the, okay, so I'm in. So now I'm into that box. Basically, there's nothing on there. I guess I can do a So the Apache server's running. So that really didn't take all that long. So I know this was probably a very cursory example, but I had tried really hard to have my Vivo example working today. But the system, you can see, I mean, if you can kind of conceptualize, you can see how valuable this might be. Because in our other projects that we work on, and what I'm trying to do with the Vivo one, is I'm going to have a sample data set. So not only are you going to have a base 1.6 app, but I'm going to load some data into it so that people will have a Vivo they can download with Git, do a Git clone, do a Vagrant up, and they'll have a Vivo they can start playing with. They can do some of those source code examples that I see. They can run some of those SPARQL queries inside there that are on our wiki. So that's kind of my idea. And I figured this would be a lot easier and more lightweight than trying to distribute the 4 gig VMware file that we had before, or the VirtualBox file we had before.
This looks great, Chris.
Thanks, pal. Let me undo here before I lose my whole file. Any questions? If you haven't done anything with Vagrant yet, it is definitely worth a read. You'll be thinking about how you could use it pretty soon. It definitely simplifies deploying.
Chris, I use.
Sure, go ahead.
I use Vagrant too, but I haven't created a bootstrap script like this. So if you want somebody to test this out when you think you have it ready, let me know and I'll be happy to do that.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, same here. I've got Vagrant up and running, but if you need some help on it, I've got a half-completed one that's not nearly as close as yours is to being ready to go for Vivo. So.
Yeah, my big problem is that, Stephen, I think I picked the wrong box file to start with, so it had OpenJDK installed. And that was just causing I installed Java properly, but then when Ant went to build, it was looking for the tools.jar in a place where it didn't exist. So, yeah. So I think I need to pick a box that did not already have OpenJDK installed. So
that would be good. Or there was a bash script that maybe in Google Docs that Nick had that would remove OpenJDK from an Ubuntu and then put Sun Java back on. I don't know if it still works with current versions of Ubuntu, but
yeah, the problem is, so you can get it off pretty well. I've got it in my script here. See, I'll highlight it. You can do an apt-get remove OpenJDK 6-star, and it does a pretty good job of taking it out. The problem that I had was that there used to be a Sun Java 6 package for Ubuntu, but I guess sometime last November, Sun told Canonical they can't do it anymore. So I had to kind of cobble together this script right here, which does a wget to pull down the latest JDK from Sun and install it by hand. But I got it working. So, and I really didn't have any problems. I actually had Tomcat working, and I had MySQL working. I did a Git clone of the Vivo repository from GitHub for 1.6. So it pulls down the latest version, so it can show someone how to use Git to pull down their code.
Excellent.
And then install it. I'm just stuck at the build, so, but I'll get it. I'll probably another week or so.
If you move it to there's a Vagrant file, by the way, that Vagrant folder, which shows up in the share drive. So anything that the operating system puts, or anything that the VM puts into it's like /Vagrant, I think, on the file system of the VM.
Yep.
You could then manipulate it in like Eclipse on your actual desktop, and then have it do something on the server.
That's how we actually used to install MySQL. We used to have a binary in the Vagrant, and we do it from there. But I figured pulling stuff down from the web would be easier for people to follow. But yeah, that's a good point. You can. Vagrant is powerful.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
if you pulled it down, but pulled it down into that Vagrant location, then they would have Vivo like on their desktop accessible, the source codes for both Vivo and Vitro, which would be kind of cool.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. I see what you're saying there. To install it from that location. Okay, that's a good idea. Because then you can do, so Vagrant supports this thing where you can make a change, and then say I made a change to this script, and then I wanted to install this other stuff. I could go back over here. I exit out of my SSH session, and I would do a Vagrant Reload. If I could type. So what this does is this is going to try and basically, without destroying the machine and taking all the time to ooh, big ugly hairy error. Normally it works. So what it does is it attempts to reload the there it goes. It attempts to reload the config file without having to re-download the box file or re-download anything. And by the way, it caches the box file, so you only have to download it from the internet once. So yeah, this will be something that I'll give some updates on too as I get this working better. I'd love to have some people test it out. I've for years and years and years, I've heard people talking about we want Vivo examples with a Vivo with some data in it we can just blow up and play with. And I think that Vagrant has given us a tool finally that where we can do that pretty lightweight and make it actually work. Well, hey, it's 2 o'clock here. I'm sorry I hogged up all the agenda. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to talk about here right at the end? Maybe something for next time's agenda? All right, so as a reminder, the next call is going to be offset time-wise. It's going to be in 2 weeks, and it will be at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in an effort to try and meet the timeline and hopefully get some of our international collaborators to join in on the call. And again, the agenda for that will come out a week before the call, so the agenda will come out on the 17th, so a week from today. So if anybody has any... if anybody has anything that they want to talk about on the next agenda, or if they'd like to see anything else, please feel free to email me. I'm also looking for some presenters. If anyone would be willing to present something that they're working on, a tool or something at the next call, I'd really appreciate it. Because otherwise, you're just going to keep seeing me present my stuff, and that'll get boring real quick. So.
Well, you did well today, Chris. This was great.
Well, thank you, John. Thank you, guys. Thanks, everyone, for attending the call. I really appreciate it. I'm kind of excited. I really think that that we'll really be able to move this forward.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thanks, everybody, and I hope to see you. And if I don't see you in the next call, we're definitely in 4 weeks' time. We'll be back to the 1 p.m. Eastern time. All right, thanks, everybody. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.